The vast emptiness of space was broken by a small, sleek spacecraft. Its silver hull gleamed in the light of distant stars as it zipped through the cosmic void. Inside, Captain Zara of the Zorak species paced nervously. Her large, almond-shaped eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of stress among her kind. "Status report," Zara barked, her voice tinged with worry. Her second-in-command, Klex, looked up from the control panel. "We're approaching the edge of known space, Captain. Are you sure about this?" Zara's antenna twitched, another sign of her unease. "We have no choice, Klex. Our world is dying. If we don't find help soon, our entire species will be wiped out. The cosmic plague had appeared suddenly on their homeworld. It spread faster than anything they had ever seen, killing plants, animals, and Zorak alike. Their best scientists were stumped. Their most advanced technology was useless against it. In a last, desperate move, the Zorak leaders had sent out ships in all directions, hoping to find a species advanced enough to help the Zara-S ship had been traveling for months. They had passed countless stars and planets, but found no signs of intelligent life. Hope was running low and supplies were running out. Suddenly, a loud beep echoed through the ship. Klex's eyes widened as he stared at the screen in front of him. "Captain, I'm picking up signals." "Artificial signals!" Zara rushed to his side, her heart pounding. "Where? How far?" Klex's fingers flew over the controls. "It's coming from a small blue planet in a nearby system, about 2 light days away." For the first time in months, Zara felt a spark of hope. "Set a course immediately. Maximum speed." As they approached the planet, the signals grew stronger. They could make out radio waves, television broadcasts, and internet communications. It was a cacophony of information, overwhelming their sensors. "It's incredible," Klex whispered. "They're broadcasting their entire culture into space. Music, stories, news, everything!" Zara nodded, her mind racing. "Can we understand any of it?" Klex shook his head. "Our translators are working overtime, but it's a completely alien language. It will take time to decipher." "We don't have time," Zara said grimly. "We need to make contact now." She turned to her communications officer. "Prepare a distress signal. Use universal mathematical concepts to show we're intelligent. And add visuals of the plague. Make them understand we need help." For hours, they worked on the message. They used prime numbers, geometric shapes, and basic physics equations to prove their intelligence. They added images and video of their dying world, showing the devastating effects of the plague. Finally, Zara gave the order. "Send it." The message shot out from their ship, racing towards the blue planet at the speed of light. Now all they could do was wait. Days passed. The crew grew restless. What if the inhabitants of this world couldn't understand their message? What if they chose to ignore it? What if they were hostile? Zara tried to keep her crew's spirits up, but doubt gnawed at her. Had she led them on a fool's errand? Had she doomed her people by pinning their hopes on an unknown species? Just as despair began to set in, their sensors lit up. A transmission was coming from the planet, aimed directly at their ship. "They've responded," Klex shouted, his voice filled with excitement and fear. The crew gathered around the main screen as the message began to play. At first, it was just a series of mathematical equations, mirroring the start of their own message. Then images appeared. They saw beings unlike any they had encountered before. 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head with 2 eyes. Their skin colors varied, as did the coverings they wore. But what struck Zara most was the look in their eyes. It was a look of determination, of compassion. The images shifted, showing these beings in various settings. In one, they were healing their own kind in large buildings filled with strange equipment. In another, they were exploring their own planet, delving into deep oceans and scaling tall mountains. Then came images that made Zara's breath catch. The beings were shown leaving their planet, exploring their own solar system in crude but effective spacecraft. The final image was the most powerful. It showed one of the beings, dressed in a protective suit, reaching out a hand. The message was clear. "We're coming to help." Zara felt tears in her eyes. She turned to her stunned crew, a smile breaking across her face. "Send a reply. Tell them thank you." As Klex prepared the message, Zara stared out at the blue planet. Against all odds, They had found not just an intelligent species, but one willing to help complete strangers from across the stars. For the first time since the plague had appeared, Zara felt real hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together with these remarkable beings from the blue planet. The beings that called tea. The message from the Zorans echoed through Earth's airwaves, a desperate plea that touched hearts across the globe. Governments and scientists scrambled to make sense of the alien transmission. It was a moment that would change human history forever. In a small town in Ohio, Sarah Jenkins sat glued to her TV. The 28-year-old engineer watched as world leaders debated what to do. Some wanted to ignore the call, fearing it might be a trap. Others argued that humanity had a duty to help. "We can't just sit here and do nothing," Sarah muttered, her fists clenched. She had always dreamed of space travel, of meeting alien life. Now, that dream seemed closer than ever. Thousands of miles away, in a bustling control room in Houston, Dr. Mike Chen pored over the alien message. His team had been working non-stop for days, trying to decipher every detail. "It's not just a cry for help," Mike explained to his colleagues, his eyes shining with excitement. "They've sent us coordinates, technical data. They're giving us everything we need to reach them." In New York, the United Nations called an emergency session. Representatives from every country gathered to make a decision that would affect not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. The debate was heated. Some nations feared the cost and risk of such a mission. Others saw it as humanity's chance to prove itself on the cosmic stage. In the end, it was the impassioned speech of a young delegate from a small African nation that tipped the scales. "We have been given a gift," she declared, her voice ringing through the hall. "A chance to show that humanity is more than just our conflicts and our differences. We can be heroes not just to ourselves, but to the stars." The vote was unanimous. Earth would answer the call. What followed was the greatest mobilization in human history. Countries that had once been enemies now worked side by side. Scientists shared breakthroughs freely. Billionaires emptied their bank accounts to fund the mission. In labs and workshops around the world, new technologies were born. Engines that could cross light years in weeks. Shields that could withstand the harshest space radiation. Medicine that could adapt to alien biology. But the heart of the mission would be its crew. The best and brightest from every corner of the globe. And to everyone's surprise, at the top of that list was Sarah Jenkins from Ohio. Her innovative designs for the ship's propulsion system had caught the eye of the selection committee. Now she found herself in the spotlight, thrust from her quiet life into the center of humanity's greatest adventure. I never thought I'd be chosen," Sarah stammered during her first press conference. But as cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions, she felt a strength growing inside her. "But I promise we won't let Earth down. We won't let the Zorans down." Training was brutal. The crew had to prepare for every possible scenario. They learned to pilot the ship, to repair complex systems, to fight if necessary. But most importantly, they learned to work together. Sarah found herself bonding with her crewmates. There was Li Wei, the brilliant Chinese physicist with a wicked sense of humor. Maria Gonzalez, the tough-as-nails pilot who could thread a needle with a spacecraft. And Jamal Mbeki, the calm and compassionate doctor who would be responsible for figuring out Zoran biology. As the launch date approached, the whole world held its breath. Schools were closed. Workers took days off. Everyone wanted to witness the moment humanity reached for the stars. The night before launch, Sarah couldn't sleep. She snuck out of her quarters and made her way to the launch pad. There, gleaming under the floodlights, stood their ship. The Hope of Terra, they had named it. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" a voice said behind her. Sarah turned to see Captain Alexei Volkov, the mission commander. The gruff Russian had been a space station veteran before being chosen to lead this mission. "It's beautiful," Sarah replied. "Do you think we can really do this, Captain? Save an alien race?" Alexei was quiet for a moment. Then he put a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Jenkins, look up there!" He pointed at the stars. "For thousands of years, humans have looked up and wondered if we were alone. Now we know we're not, and our first act as a galactic civilization is to extend a helping hand. If that's not humanity at its best, I don't know what is." His words filled Sarah with determination. As she looked at the stars, she made a silent promise. They would succeed. They had to. Launch day arrived with a dawn painted in breathtaking reds and golds. As the crew walked out in their sleek spacesuits, cheers erupted from the crowds. Millions more watched on screens around the world. Sarah's heart pounded as she strapped into her seat. She could hear the hum of the engines she had helped design. "Feel the vibrations through the ship's hull. Hope of Terra, you are go for launch," came the voice from Mission Control. Captain Volkov's steady voice responded, "Roger that. Let's go save some aliens." The countdown began. Sarah closed her eyes, thinking of all that had led to this moment. The Zoran's desperate call. Humanity's choice to answer. The work of thousands to make this possible. As the engines roared to life, as the ship lifted off the pad in a blaze of light and sound, Sarah felt a fierce joy. They were on their way. Humanity had chosen hope over fear, unity over division. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The hope of Terra soared into the sky, carrying with it the dreams and determination of an entire planet. The rescue mission had begun, and with it, a new chapter in the story of humanity. As Earth shrank behind them and the stars beckoned ahead, Sarah knew one thing for certain. Win or lose, succeed or fail, they had already proven something incredible. When the universe called for heroes, humanity had answered. The battle against nature. The sky of Zorak Prime was a swirling mass of angry clouds. Lightning flashed every few seconds, illuminating the alien landscape in brief, stark relief. On the ground, two very different species worked side by side, racing against time. Captain Sarah Chen of the Earthship Hope wiped sweat from her brow. Even through her protective suit, she could feel the oppressive heat and humidity. She turned to her Zorak counterpart, Zara. "How much time do we have before the storm hits?" Sarah asked, her voice crackling through the suit's speaker. Zara's antenna twitched nervously. "Less than 2 hours. If we don't get the shield generators online by then..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. They both knew what was at stake. The massive storm approaching was unlike anything either species had ever seen. It was a side effect of the cosmic plague that had ravaged the Zorak world, twisting the planet's weather into a deadly fury. Sarah nodded grimly. "We'll make it. We have to." Around them, humans and Zorak worked frantically. The humans had brought advanced weather control technology, things the Zorak had never dreamed of. But the Zorak knew their world, its quirks and dangers. It was only by working together that they had any hope of success. "Team Alpha, report," Sarah barked into her comm. "Shield Generator 1 is online, Captain," came the reply. "But we're having trouble with the power coupling on Generator 2. Sarah cursed under her breath. "I'm on my way. Zara, can you check on Team Beta?" Zara nodded, her large eyes blinking rapidly. "Of course." "Be careful, Sarah. The ground becomes unstable near the generator sites." As if to emphasize her point, the earth shook beneath their feet. In the distance, a massive crack appeared in the ground, steam hissing out. Sarah sprinted towards Generator 2, her heart pounding. The fate of an entire species rested on their success. No pressure, she thought wryly. She found her team struggling with a mass of wires and alien technology. The Zorak equipment was incredibly advanced in some ways, but primitive in others. Integrating it with Earth tech had been a nightmare. "What's the problem?" Sarah asked, kneeling beside her chief engineer. "The power output is fluctuating," he replied, frustration clear in his voice. "We can't get a stable connection." Sarah's mind raced. They had encountered similar issues during testing back on Earth. What if we use the quantum stabilizer? It might be able to handle the energy spikes. The engineer's eyes lit up. That could work. But we'll need to recalibrate the entire system. It'll take time. Sarah checked her watch. "Do it. We don't have a choice." As her team got to work, Sarah's comm crackled to life. It was Zara, and she sounded panicked. "Sarah!" "The storm. It's accelerating. We have less than an hour." Sarah felt her blood run cold. She looked at the sky, and sure enough, the clouds were moving faster, swirling with malevolent purpose. "Understood. We're working as fast as we can. How's Team Beta doing? Generator 3 is online, but 4 is having similar issues to yours," Zara replied. Sarah made a quick decision. Send them the specs for the quantum stabilizer. Tell them to implement the same solution. For the next 40 minutes, humans and Zorak worked in perfect harmony. Despite their differences, despite the language barrier and alien biology, they moved like a well-oiled machine. Sarah felt a surge of pride. This was humanity at its best, reaching out across the stars to help a species in need. With just 10 minutes to spare, all 4 generators came online. A shimmer appeared in the air as the weather shield activated, spreading out to cover the Zorak city. But their relief was short-lived. As the storm hit, it became clear that even their advanced technology was barely enough. The shield buckled under the onslaught, flaring with each lightning strike. "It's not gonna hold!" Zara cried, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. Sarah gritted her teeth. They hadn't come this far to fail now. "We need more power." "Zara, can we tap into your city's power grid?" Zara's eyes widened. But that would leave the city defenseless against the plague. "If this storm hits, there won't be a city left to defend," Sarah countered. "It's a risk we have to take." For a moment, Zara hesitated. Then she nodded, her face set with determination. "Do it." The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Humans and Zorak worked side by side, rerouting power, strengthening the shield. The storm raged above them, a maelstrom of wind and lightning that seemed determined to wipe them from existence. Just when it seemed the shield would fail, there was a sudden surge of power. The shield flared brightly, pushing back against the storm. Slowly, inch by inch, the dangerous clouds were forced back. For hours they held their breath, watching as their creation battled against nature gone mad. And finally, as the twin suns of Zorak Prime peeked through the clouds, they knew they had won. The cheering started with one human, then spread to the Zorak, until the air was filled with the sounds of 2 species celebrating as one. Sarah found herself swept up in a hug by Zara, the alien's joy palpable. As the noise died down, Zara turned to Sarah, her eyes shimmering with what the human assumed were tears. "Thank you," she said simply. "You saved us." Sarah shook her head, smiling. "No, we saved you. Humans and Zorak working together. This is just the beginning, Zara. Together, I think our species can accomplish anything." As they looked out over the battered but standing city, Sarah felt a sense of hope. They had faced down nature at its worst and emerged victorious. The cosmic plague was still out there, still a threat. But now they faced it not as separate species, but as allies, as friends. The celebration on the Zoran homeworld lasted for days. Humans and Zorans alike rejoiced in their shared victory over nature's fury. But as the festivities began to wind down, a sense of unease crept into Sarah's mind. "Something doesn't feel right," she confided to Dr. Jamal Mbeki one evening. The medical officer raised an eyebrow, inviting her to continue. "The storms are gone, but I don't know. It's too quiet." Jamal nodded slowly. "I've been feeling it too, and there's something else." He lowered his voice. "I've been noticing some odd symptoms among the Zorans. Nothing major, just unusual." Before they could discuss further, an alarm blared through the human base. Captain Volkov's voice came over the intercom, tense and urgent. "All personnel report to the main hall immediately." As the human crew gathered, they were joined by High Commander Zix and other Zoran leaders. The aliens looked worried, their usually colorful feathers dull and drooping. "We have a situation," Volkov began, his face grim. "Our long-range sensors have picked up something approaching the planet. Something big. A hologram flickered to life in the center of the room, showing a massive object moving through space. It was like nothing Sarah had ever seen, a twisted mass of metal and energy, pulsing with an eerie light. "What is that thing?" Maria Gonzalez asked, her pilot's eyes trying to make sense of its strange movements. High Commander Zix stepped forward, his voice heavy. "It is the reason we called for help. The true threat to our world." A shocked murmur ran through the human crew. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as Zix continued. "We call it the Devourer. It travels from world to world, consuming all in its path. The storms were just a side effect." "But why didn't you tell us this before?" Volkov demanded, anger and betrayal clear in his voice. Zix's feathers drooped even further. "We feared you would not come if you knew the true danger. We are sorry for the deception, but we were desperate." For a moment, tension filled the room. Sarah could see the hurt and anger on her crewmates' faces. But then, to everyone's surprise, Dr. Li Wei spoke up. "It doesn't matter why we came," he said firmly. "We're here now and there's a job to do." Volkov looked at his crew, then back at Zix. Slowly, he nodded. "All right, tell us everything you know about this Devourer." The next hours were a flurry of activity. The Zorans shared all their knowledge about the cosmic terror approaching their world. It was a being of pure energy, able to manipulate matter and space itself. It had destroyed countless worlds before, leaving nothing but lifeless husks in its wake. As the humans and Zorans worked together to form a plan, Sarah found herself working once again with Krell. The young Zoran engineer looked ashamed. "I wanted to tell you the truth," he said quietly, "but I was afraid." Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder. "I understand," she said, and she did. Faced with the extinction of their species, who wouldn't grasp at any hope? Their plan was audacious. They would use the weather control network they had built, but reprogram it to create a massive energy field around the planet. In theory, it could repel the Devourer. But there was a catch. Someone would need to be on a space station in orbit, manually adjusting the field to counter the Devourer's attacks. It would be incredibly dangerous. "I'll do it," Sarah said, stepping forward. She met Captain Volkov's eyes, daring him to argue. After a long moment, he nodded. "All right, Jenkins, but you're not going alone. Krell, you'll go with her." As they prepared for the mission, a somber mood fell over both humans and Zorans. This was no longer just about saving one world. If they failed, the Devourer would continue its path of destruction, perhaps one day even reaching Earth. The day of the Devourer's arrival dawned clear and bright, a stark contrast to the danger looming above. Sarah and Krell said their goodbyes and boarded the shuttle that would take them to the orbital station. As they rose through the atmosphere, Sarah got her first real look at the Devourer. It was even more terrifying up close, a writhing mass of energy that seemed to devour the very light around it. "Ready?" she asked Krell, trying to keep her voice steady. The Zoran's feathers rippled in determination. "Ready." They docked with the station and raced to the control room. Below them, the planet's surface began to glow as the energy field activated. For a while, it seemed to be working. The Devourer's tendrils of energy splashed harmlessly against the field. But then it changed tactics. It began to concentrate its attack on one point, trying to punch through. Sarah's fingers flew over the controls, redirecting power to reinforce the weakening sections. Beside her, Krell called out readings and made adjustments to the field's frequency. Suddenly, a massive surge hit the station. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks, and Sarah was thrown across the room. She hit the wall hard, her vision blurring. Through the haze of pain, she saw Krell desperately trying to maintain the field. But it was failing. The Devourer was breaking through. In that moment, Sarah had a flash of inspiration. The Devourer fed on energy. What if, instead of trying to repel it, they gave it what it wanted? But too much all at once? "Krell!" she shouted, dragging herself back to the console. "We need to overload the field. Give the Devourer everything we've got." Krell's eyes widened as he understood. It was risky they might destroy their own planet in the process, but it was their only chance. Together, they began to reroute all power to the field. The station groaned around them, systems overloading. On the view screen, they saw the Devourer pause in its attack, seeming almost confused. Then, with a final surge of power, the field exploded outward. A blinding flash filled the view screen, and Sarah felt the station begin to break apart around them. As consciousness faded, her last thought was of Earth, and the hope that they had done enough to save not just one world, but many. When Sarah awoke, she was surprised to find herself alive. She was in a medical bay, Krell slumped in a chair beside her bed. As her eyes opened, the Zoran jerked awake. "You're alive!" he exclaimed, his feathers bristling with joy. Slowly, the story came out. Their desperate gambit had worked. The energy overload had disrupted the Devourer, scattering its essence harmlessly into space. Both Earth and the Zoran homeworld were safe. As Sarah looked out the window at the peaceful Zoran world below, she realized that this adventure was just the beginning. Humanity had taken its first steps into a larger galaxy, full of wonders and dangers alike. Whatever came next, they would face it together, humans, Zorans, and whatever other allies they might find among the stars. When humanity heeded our plea for help. Part 5, A New Beginning. The twin suns of Zorak Prime rose slowly over the horizon, bathing the alien world in a warm, golden light. Sarah Jenkins stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city, marveling at how much had changed in just a few short months. Where once there had been ruins and devastation, new buildings now reached for the sky. The air was clean and clear, no longer choked with the dust of cosmic storms. And everywhere she looked, she saw humans and Zorans working side by side. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" a voice said behind her. Sarah turned to see Krell, her Zoran friend and fellow hero of the battle against the Devourer. Sarah nodded, smiling. "It's more than I ever dreamed possible when we first arrived here. Today was a big day. Representatives from Earth were arriving to discuss the future of human-Zoran relations. There was talk of trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and even a joint space exploration program." As Sarah and Krell made their way to the grand meeting hall, they passed through streets filled with a mix of humans and Zorans. Children from both species played together in parks, their laughter a universal language of joy. "You know," Krell said, his feathers rippling in what Sarah had learned was a sign of amusement, "a year ago. If you had told me I'd be friends with an alien, I would have thought you were crazy." Sarah laughed. "Same here. But I can't imagine my life without you guys now." The meeting hall was packed when they arrived. On one side sat the human delegation, led by the Secretary-General of the United Nations. On the other, the Zoran High Council, with High Commander Zix at its head. As the junior members of their respective teams, Sarah and Krell found seats at the back. But they didn't mind. They knew the part they had played in bringing this day about. High Commander Zix stood to speak first. "Honored guests from Earth," he began, his translator conveying his words in perfect English. "Not long ago, we sent a desperate plea into the stars, hoping against hope that someone would answer. You did more than answer. You came, you helped, and you stood with us against a threat that would have destroyed us all." The Secretary-General nodded solemnly. "We came as neighbors offering help. We leave as friends bound by shared struggle and triumph." What followed was a series of speeches and presentations. Plans were laid out for joint scientific missions, for the exchange of technology and knowledge. There was even talk of establishing a permanent human settlement on Zorak Prime. As Sarah listened, she felt a surge of pride. This was what humanity could be at its best. Not conquerors or exploiters, but partners and friends. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were moments of tension, particularly when discussing military cooperation. Some humans were wary of sharing too much technology, while some Zorans feared becoming too dependent on their new allies. During a break in the proceedings, Sarah overheard a heated discussion between two delegates. "We can't just give them our best tech," a human diplomat was saying. "What if they use it against us one day? After all we've been through together, you still don't trust us?" a Zoran counselor replied, his feathers bristling with indignation. Sarah was about to step in when Captain Volkov beat her to it. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice calm but firm, "let me tell you a story." He told them about the battle against the Devourer, about how Sarah and Krell had risked their lives together to save both their worlds. "Trust isn't about being naive," Volkov concluded. "It's about choosing to believe in the best in each other. That's what saved us before. That's what will carry us forward." His words seemed to have an effect. When the meeting resumed, there was a new spirit of cooperation in the air. As the day wore on, Sarah found her mind wandering to the future. What wonders might they discover together? What other civilizations might they encounter? Her thoughts were interrupted by a commotion at the entrance to the hall. A group of Zoran scientists burst in, their feathers quivering with excitement. "Apologies for the interruption," one of them said, "but we've made an incredible discovery." They quickly set up a holographic projector. An image flickered to life in the center of the room, showing a strange, swirling anomaly in space. "We believe it's a wormhole," the lead scientist explained. "Stable enough for travel. and our initial scans suggest, well, it's almost too incredible to believe. We think there's a habitable planet on the other side. The room erupted in excited chatter. A wormhole! A new world to explore! It was like something out of a science fiction story. High Commander Zix raised his hands for silence. My friends, he said, looking around the room, it seems the universe has presented us with a new challenge and a new opportunity. He turned to the human delegation. What say you? Shall we explore this new frontier together? The Secretary General stood, a smile on her face. High Commander, I can think of no better way to cement our newfound friendship than to step into the unknown side by side. A cheer went up from humans and Zorans alike. Sarah felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to see Krell, his eyes shining with excitement. Looks like our adventure isn't over yet, he said. Sarah grinned. Wouldn't have it any other way. As the meeting dissolved into excited planning sessions, Sarah stepped out onto a balcony for a moment of quiet. The sky above was darkening, the first stars of evening peeking out. She thought about how far they had come. From a desperate plea for help to the cusp of interstellar exploration, humanity had answered the call, had risen to challenges they never could have imagined. And in doing so, they had not only saved a civilization, but had grown into something greater themselves. Whatever lay on the other side of that wormhole, whatever challenges the future might hold, Sarah knew one thing for certain. They would face it together. Humans and Zorans, no longer separated by the vast gulfs of space, but united in friendship and common purpose. As she gazed up at the stars, Sarah felt a sense of limitless possibility. This truly was a new beginning, not just for her or for humanity, but for two civilizations bound together by courage, compassion, and an unquenchable thirst for discovery. The adventure, it seemed, was only just beginning.